Hey, this is David Johnson, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the Playdraft Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in.
Hey, everybody.
It's good to be back.
It's good to be back.
Andy, Mike, and Jason, the Fantasy Footballers, back in business today. Got a great episode for you. Judge Giamatti is behind the curtain, quite literally.
That's where he belongs.
Running the show, chuckling to himself.
I'm back here.
There he is. Welcome in.
I did not realize that Paul Giamatti has played the Wizard of Oz until now.
Yes.
He's back
behind,
there running the show.
He's a very multifaceted and talented actor.
Super versatile.
Yeah. I think on the Footcast yesterday we said, however, there are no good pictures of him.
Of Paul Giamatti?
He's a great actor. No real good pictures of Paul Giamatti.
If there's anyone to blame for that, it's his face.
Sure. That's not a nice thing to say.
Sorry, Paul.
All right, welcome in. Look, today's episode is one of my favorites of the entire year. We have done this once a year, and we have your top 10 tips and tricks to win your league. And so we want to bring you some eye-opening things that maybe you haven't thought of, some of the intangibles, okay? There is one side of the equation. That is the rankings. That is the projections and statistics and analysis and matchups. There is another equation, and that is the intangibles. That is your league. That is the things that maybe you don't realize you're not doing.
The game within the game.
Yeah, and we pride ourselves on this show to equip you for on both sides.
A holistic approach to fantasy football.
That is right. That is right. So we are bringing you the top 10 tips and tricks to win your fantasy football league on the show today. I want to talk about, real quick, the quick question. It's not really a question. Let's do quick comments of the day.
Sure.
Monday, we'll get into all of the preseason week 2 review, conclusions, thoughts, all of our opinions. There were 3 games yesterday, and I just want to get a quick hit. Your takeaway from the games last night. Mike, you want to start it off?
Sure. I'll jump in here. My biggest takeaway, if you were following me on Twitter, I was getting pretty amped for Devontae Parker, and this is not so much an endorsement of the player Parker, which
I fully endorse.
He's a talented, very athletic guy, first-round draft pedigree. It just hasn't happened before.
Big boy.
But now we have Jay Cutler, who over his career has shown us time and time again that when he finds his best friend, they are BFFs forever.
So you think that there's a little invitation that was given last night by Jay Cutler?
There certainly was.
Are they sharing bracelets or lockets yet?
I imagine that right now at this very moment, they are, in fact, creating the friendship bracelets together, because he came in and Jay Cutler sent the targets to Devontae Parker, and then he showered him in praise and called him faster Alshon Jeffrey.
He's like Alshon, except he's fast.
I mean, look, it's – and my tweet was, small sample size, don't care. Because Jay Cutler has shown me who he is, so Devontae Parker will rise up my draft board.
There's a big impact when you see Jay Cutler in the pocket compared to Ryan Tannehill, just in the aspect that when he steps up in the pocket, now he's a wild man. Don't get me wrong, he's a wild man. His eyes are downfield.
It's cigarettes lit.
Yeah, the cigarette's lit, and he's chucking. He threw a couple targets into double coverage. I think that's what people were freaking out about is, well, he didn't care.
Yeah,
Jay Cutler doesn't care.
Never has.
Don't care.
Don't care. Gonna throw it anyways.
So I just we'll see what happens in preseason game 3, and this is more for me because I wasn't excited at all to draft Parker. He has that breakout potential with Tannehill, but it was Matt Moore was a little bit more enticing, but with Jay Cutler already showing that he could be locking onto him early. Love it.
So you're in.
For me, I would say Tyrod Taylor. The absence of Sammy Watkins, the fact that they traded for Jordan Matthews, who was not there, the lack of receiving options for Tyrod Taylor was evident in the sense that he threw 2 picks, one of them not
necessarily
his
takeaways
fault.
from that game were quite literal for Tyrod Taylor.
Yes, they were. There were multiple takeaways.
Yes.
From that game, and then the coaching staff at first did not really endorse him. Then they came out and said he's the starter. It tempers my expectation and my my hopes. I would actually say when it comes to Tyrod Taylor. If you don't have good enough weapons to throw it to, sure, he'll run the ball. He'll be valuable. He'll be a good streamer. But I have much less confidence for a season-long. When I draft that late quarterback, I'm trying to find the guy that's going to be, it just happens to be a top 5 quarterback that was drafted late. I'm less inclined to believe that Tyrod Taylor has that potential.
I have 2 takeaways, so I'm going to cheat. The first one is LeGarrette Blount is going to average 0 yards per carry if they continue to run stretch plays for LeGarrette Blount. It's one of the most – I mean, he's already a guy that the talent is questioned on a regular basis by different experts. He was in an incredible system last year that put him in a position to, one, do the thing he can do, which is run downhill. And when I watched them run these stretch plays, it was reminiscent of putting – I know it's a totally different regime, but when you put DeMarco Murray in a situation where he couldn't succeed in Philly, it was like,
I'm doing it.
You're not going to see LeGarrette Blount cut on a dime on that stretch play, find the crease, or get to the edge. There was no possible outcome there, at least with what that offensive line was doing. There were some struggles from Lane Johnson at left tackle last night. The offense didn't look as good for Philly as it did in week 1. But it hasn't looked good for LeGarrette Blount in either game yet. And so you need to pay attention to, look, if he's not going to be efficient on the field, it's going to hurt wins. It's going to hurt that offense. Stop running the stretch play. And then the big headliner everybody wants to talk about.
Bort!
A few weeks ago, I forced Jason to draft Carson Palmer in our dynasty draft over Blake Bortles. And it was debated, and then Jason got on board. This is why I said – only one of those 2 players could possibly not be the starter. Now it looks like Blake Bortles, after last night's disastrous game, there was already a little writing on the wall. He had a tired arm day in practice.
People are freaking out about this Allen Robinson pass. And to be fair, he only underthrew him by like 15 yards.
It was not good. He has no confidence. It has been a slow decline of confidence since the middle of last year, and that is the problem. Note, the accuracy, it's gone. Robinson was peppered with targets, and I mean, it can't mean bad things for Allen Robinson if there's another. Yeah, it can. Yeah, it can. Because Chad Henne's not much better, and Brandon Allen's a rookie.
Franchise.
So this is why we said yesterday.
Bad vibes.
Allen Robinson was on my list of bad situation, great talent, and it's got to be frustrating as a wide receiver in that situation. A couple of the passes last night, he's breaking wide open, and the ball was underthrown or was overthrown or it was. Yeah, Blake Bortles. The news is this. That competition is wide open. There's a decent chance he doesn't even start the year as a starter. There's already talk about him being cut in the offseason. They had picked up the option. Whoops. They can still cut him without guaranteed money in 2018. So
as long as he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, it's not good. So that's the headline. Those are some takeaways. We'll get into all the other games on Monday. Going to have a great show then. I want to make sure that we are getting into the tips and tricks on today's episode. I did want to mention one thing that I'm excited about. We are on Twitter at the FF Ballers. We're also on the SleeperBot app. So if you don't have the SleeperBot app, we have a channel on there. You guys can always see our new content on the SleeperBot app. And I'm kind of getting excited about the SleeperBot leagues. They just launched them, but they update them like every day. They just keep making them better. There's 3-team trades in there. We ran our company league through SleeperBot this year, and like I understand that can be like a trepidatious thing to change a league service and what you're doing, but I like what they do with that team over there. They're trying to build a really innovative league system, and it's more modern than any of the other ones where you're on your phone. I'm pretty excited about what they're doing, so you might want to check it out. We did for our company league.
The only thing I would add to that is that the team over there that belongs to me is very good.
Oh, for our company,
in the
six-team league, Jay.
Yeah,
yeah. I guess we're all of our teams are very good.
In this league, I just dropped Dante Moncrief.
Yeah.
And no one's going to pick him up.
I looked at my Odell Beckham Jr. Michael Thomas stack, and I was like, oh, yeah, baby. Then I just scrolled over to the left. I'm like, Wait, everybody's got a great stack.
You want to feel good about your team getting a 6-man league.
Yeah, if you want an autographed David Johnson helmet, we're giving one away right now at footclangiveaway.com. And look, let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Without further ado.
Tips and tricks.
All right, let's talk about the top 10 tips and tricks to win your league. Things that we have pulled out this year. Mike, you get to kick it off.
Number 10.
Ooh, I was not ready for that. But
yeah.
Number 10, I'm going to talk about don't get sentimental.
All right.
And we all are guilty of this.
There's no crying in fantasy football.
I'm not even talking about crying. I'm talking about holding on to what has happened. Either it was positive or negative. I mean, I won a championship on the back of Robert Griffin III. The next year, I'm moving on. I'm moving on. It's during the offseason.
Now, you did commemorate that title by putting him up on the wall.
Absolutely, but I don't let that tarnish my judgment moving forward. It's and if you want to take players from your home team, go ahead. But it's dangerous. It's dangerous if you're a homer because you only see the bright side of things. We're Arizona Cardinals supporters, but we see what's going on with the passing game and with John Brown and his injuries, and I'm not going to paint a rosy picture of that situation. And then this is the toughest one for me because I'm a grudge holder. When a player burns you, when you think this is that you plant your flag on someone, this is my breakout player of the year. They bust. They bust in a terrible way. That doesn't mean that they won't do it the following year, and you're going to let these fantasy third-degree burns on your body say, well, no, I can't possibly draft him because he sucked last year for my team. Like, take a look at the situation. Every day is a new day. Every year is a new year in fantasy football. So do not let your sentimental attachment in a good or bad way thwart your race to a championship.
It's definitely a good tip for those who have played for multiple years because everyone falls into that where it's just like, this guy burned me. I want nothing to do with him, and you miss a good opportunity or the opposite. And I would say this is a tip directed back to you, Mike.
Uh-oh.
Same concept, but if you are in love with a guy and he doesn't pan out because of injury, you're allowed to not have to continue being in love with him.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. And what I see happen a lot to fantasy owners is, okay, Jamal Charles won you a title a couple years ago, and you have now drafted him every year since. Because
that was great when I dialed up on my AOL connection when Jamal Charles was winning me championships.
It's basically like you're rewarding that player with a contract on your roster, and you don't want to do that in fantasy football.
You don't want your real team to do that.
I really am tempted sometimes to do that exact same thing. That was part of why I traded for Greg Olsen last year, and then he let me down.
But despite how Greg Olsen let you down, you're not going to let that sway you from saying Greg Olsen's a top 5 tight end.
That is absolutely true. I'll put his picture up on our bathroom wall to commemorate what he did. But if he's at a good value, I will absolutely draft him again this year.
All right, let's move on.
Number 9.
All right, number 9, we're going to call it quarterbacks. You can take a number. Take a number. Draft a late-round quarterback, or you could say it another way. Some reasons why you might be taking a quarterback too early in your draft. I want to make the case for you. I'm going to make it as quick as I can, but I want people to really understand why we subscribe to late-round quarterback theory here on the show. Now, there are reasons why fantasy owners reasons why fantasy owners take quarterbacks too early. The first reason is because they make the quarterback score the most points argument, right? And they're right. Quarterbacks last year, 2016, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees scored 380, 347, 332 fantasy points. That's in standard league formats. That's the most in the league. If you go look at a guy like LaShawn McCoy, he scored 248 points. So people look at that and they say, well, why wouldn't you draft the guy that scored the most points? That's 132 less points than Aaron Rodgers. So why would you take them? And the argument, what you got to realize is this comes down to position scarcity. Position scarcity. You cannot compare quarterbacks to running backs because you've got one quarterback on your roster. You got 2 running backs on your roster. And look, let me break this down for you. In 2016, the 4th-ranked quarterback was Andrew Luck. who scored 307.7 points. The 12th ranked, so your last QB1 was Andy Dalton with 260 points. So there's a gap of 46 points between Andrew Luck and Andy Dalton, right? The 4th ranked running back in 2016 was Lev Bell with 242 points. The 24th ranked running back, your last starter,
right,
was Terrence West, who scored 137 points. That's a gap of more than 100 points. More than double the gap between QB4 and QB12. So points are relative. You got to understand, points are relative to the position and to how many at that position you need to start. So if you opt for a quarterback too early, you sacrifice total points on your roster. You got to be looking at gaps, right? You got to be looking at position scarcity. The other argument that I would make is one that Mike's brought up recently, the fact that there are 40 quarterbacks.
Yes.
40 quarterbacks finished with a top 12 week. That's more quarterbacks than there are than teams in the NFL.
Look, Matt Moore put up a number 2 week. You guys remember Robert Griffin last year? He still put up a top 12 week. You put these quarterbacks in the right position against the right defense, you know that they're going to score points. The league is friendly when it comes to rules for passing. The quarterback literally touches the ball every single play unless it's one of those trick plays and it's a direct snap to the running back. But even the plays where they're going to give it to the running back, the quarterback touches the ball, and nearly every quarterback throws the ball 20 to 30 times a week, and they're going to get yards. So it's just do not fall into the trap of seeing what Aaron Rodgers does on a weekly basis, because you can piece together, you can Frankenstein a quarterback. Well, it may not feel as glamorous as having Aaron Rodgers there in the starting roster. When your opponent looks at who are they playing, oh, crap, I'm playing Aaron Rodgers, as opposed to, oh, crap, I'm playing Colin Kaepernick, who wasn't even a starting quarterback to begin the season, but it doesn't matter.
And you can crush them there. I mean, last year, every year, and this coming year, we will make our picks for streaming a quarterback off of the waiver wire. We go by the ESPN leagues, and we go, hey, what quarterbacks are available in more than half of the leagues out there on waivers and who could play and start. And when we tracked this, our amalgamation of quarterback would have been the quarterback number 6, the 6th best quarterback.
From the waiver wire.
Just from the waiver wire. Do that with running backs.
You can't.
Try to play running backs off the waiver every week.
You get the running back 44.
Yeah, if that.
You know what wasn't glamorous? You talk about it glamorous. Starting Drew Brees at the end of last year wasn't glamorous.
No, a lot of people
you would have been
lost.
stuck doing it, and somebody like Sam Bradford finished the year with 3 amazing weeks where Brees struggled during his end of season run. So 3 quick caveats to this.
Yes.
If you're in a 2-quarterback league, throw it out the window. The position scarcity argument's gone. You need 2 quarterbacks. You can still wait because there are a lot that produce, but you got to realize you need to start 2. The second caveat, value is still king. This does not mean you take this strategy and you punt quarterback to the end of your draft, even when Aaron Rodgers is there in the 6th round. That would be foolish. You still want value to determine what you're doing. And then the last one is your goal is still to find a great quarterback.
Yes.
Right.
If you draft a late-round quarterback, you still are looking to get somebody you could start the majority of your weeks. Your goal isn't to have to put it all together. If you have a guy that can finish in the top 3, Cam Newton, Carson Palmer, guys that finished in the top 5 that you drafted really late over the last couple of years, finding one of those is great, but you can only find one of those if you wait and you evaluate and do it like that.
It's great to wait.
Take a number of quarterbacks. Take yours a little bit later in the draft. Jason, it's your turn.
Number 8.
Be a stalker.
Ugh.
Yeah? Yeah, be a stalker. And what I mean by
Danger.
that is track the other teams in your league. Track the league. That is so important.
From
the
bushes of their house?
Yes, you need to sit nearby in the bushes and watch them mock draft to know what they're going to do.
So
Put
this is draft-related.
cameras in your league mate's house, whether it's just audio or visual. We need every piece.
It's just Santa Claus coming through. Don't mind me.
Here's what tracking your league and quote being a stalker
Being
means.
a draft stalker.
It means at your draft, you have to be paying attention to the other teams. Sometimes you can get tunnel vision when you're drafting. And even knowing this tip, sometimes you're so concerned about who your pick is going to be and which guys are left that you like that you don't pay attention to what the other teams in your league have. And you need to match this with where your draft position is, okay? Because there's different strategies. Let's say you're at the turn. You're the first or the last pick. You're doing that double up pick. A lot of this you could throw out the window. What you'll want to track is the overall numbers of the entire league. How many total teams have a quarterback? How many total tight ends have gone off the board so that you can start the run as opposed to be on the last side of a tight end run or something like that late in the draft. Or let's say you're near the turn and you're picking at the 7 or the 8 spot in a 10 or 12 man league. Well, now when you're coming up to your 2 somewhat quick picks, you look at the other teams because you've tracked them. What I used to do is I used to come with a pad of paper and I would write every team on a different sheet, and I'd mark those things down so that you can just look at a glance of what everybody's positions are already filled, and I can go, oh, this guy already has X amount of running backs. He's probably not going to take a running back, so I'll wait there. What this strategy does is it tells you what not to draft. It tells you I need to avoid drafting the wide receiver here because he's going to be able to come back around to me. And if you're not paying attention to the other teams in your league, then you're making a terrible mistake. And there's so many ways to do this. If you're doing a live draft or an online draft, the software you're using, ESPN, it's already built in. You just need to click the drop down and look at the other teams and get in the habit of doing that. I used to bring that pad of paper. We've been talking about the Draft Day app. I use that now, and you can mark off everybody from there. So if you're at a live draft, get the Draft Day app. That'll track everybody, but you want to make sure
it helps you know where you can wait.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, where and it just gives you better value. And if you're not paying attention to those things, then you'll get tunnel vision. You'll be a little scared when it comes time for your pick, and you won't get great value.
So just for clarity, just for the audio record, your recommendation is to be a stalker, and your name in full is
Jason Moore. I highly recommend being a stalker.
Okay. Well, moving on.
Number 7.
Number 7, we're going to talk about leveling up with tiers, tier-based drafting. You may have heard of us.
May have heard of us. We're kind of a big deal.
You may have heard us.
Many leather-bound books.
You may have heard us talking about this approach, and this approach gets you away from grabbing that 1 through 200 rankings and saying, okay, this guy's 34 and the top 33 are gone. That means I have to take.
Don't draft from top 200 rankings. That's what our tip number 1 should have been. That
Sure.
Don't use top 200.
Well, he's baked into this one because if you're using tier-based drafting, you are not doing
right
top 200 drafting. And the way it works, so think of a tier as a bucket, and this bucket holds players who are all going to, at least we're projecting, they will score a similar range of points. That helps you avoid the goo-goo eyes of saying, I have to take player X because they're just so amazing. And if I miss out on them, I'm going to tilt in my draft because you go, oh, well, he's right in the middle of that tier. There's guys who are very similar to him, very comparable to him. And it also helps you then when the draft is moving along, some running backs are going off, some wide receivers. It's going to help you find that value where – let's say everyone has gone really running back heavy, which I expect to happen this year because the pendulum is going to swing back too far away from wide receivers. And you see that when people are like, who should I take number 3 overall? Antonio Brown. I mean, he's still really good, so do not pass on the value. If the running back tier 1 is empty, don't draft from tier 2.
That bucket is empty?
Yeah, don't go to the second bucket while the wide receiver 1 bucket has still got plenty of guys. So it helps you prioritize what position you need to be looking at, when to jump in on a tight end, when to jump in on a quarterback.
That is a great one to pair with to be a stalker from Jason.
Yes.
Because if you're paying attention to your opponents and you know, hey, there's 3 guys in this bucket, but my opponents can only – the likelihood is they're only going to draft one of those guys from that bucket. You can wait. You don't need to necessarily take it. Or the opposite. Oh, I only got one guy left in this tier. I got to take him now before my opponents most assuredly are going to take them in the next round.
It's also a great one to pair with the with the late-round quarterback because people always go, well, what round? The round doesn't matter. If you're in a 2-quarterback or 1-quarterback, if you're tier-based drafting, then it won't matter. You'll just know, hey, I like this group of guys. I want to make sure I get one of this group of guys. Yes. And so when, let's say there's 6 guys in that group, that middle to late round group that you like, the Staffords and Rivards and Daltons, and, if there's 6 guys in that group, well, as soon as 2 or 3 or 4 of those guys are off, depending on where you're at in the draft, now you know when to take them.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go to number 6.
Number 6.
Know your surroundings. Know your league. That is what I got for you at number 6. This is about paying attention to the little things about your roster, about how your league settings work, about how you can exploit.
Yes, exploitation.
Legally exploit the things that make your league your league.
Go with maximize.
Yeah. Maximize,
you
exploit.
Go maximize, I go exploit.
Let me put it this way. Let me give you an example. Let's say your league has an IR spot. Okay, it's eligible for any player that is listed as out or IR. There are players, Devontae Booker's one of them, Will Fuller's one of them this year.
More will show up.
And more will show up in the next few weeks.
Sadly.
There are players that if you are in your draft and you're in the last round, and let's say we know for sure Will Fuller's coming back in 2 months. Now, he's not a great example with the quarterback, but there will be players. Antonio Gates was one a couple years ago. I'm trying to remember the running back from the Giants was one of them. It took him 2 months to come back into the regular season. But the point is this. If you have an IR spot, you can draft a player, slide him on your IR, and then sign another guy. It lets you maximize your roster, right? Maybe your league doesn't force you to roster a kicker and defense at your draft. So don't draft a kicker and a defense. Draft 2 more flyers, 2 more players that could explode in preseason week 2, week 3, and then all of a sudden you have more guys on your bench. Just wait till the regular season.
Yeah, we say don't draft a handcuff because they're not going to be great in week 1, but that's the situation where, hey, take Robert Turbin, with your last pick instead of a defense. You'll drop him before the season starts to pick up a defense to play, but should Frank Gore go down in those 2 weeks, then you got some.
I'll add to that. In season, if you don't need to keep a kicker and defense on your roster by requirement, you can kick those off at the end of the week, put 2 more of those handcuffs on your bench, wait until Friday just in case something happens, gives you another chance at maximizing your roster. And same thing goes for, what are the maximums at each position allowed in your league? If you know that, then you know what your league mates are going to be able to do. Are there any other league rules that you can maximize / exploit? But look, know your surroundings and know your league. And it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do that. If there's something you don't know, ask your commish, get clarity, figure it out beforehand, because there are ways that you can take advantage of people that don't know that in your league or people that aren't as diligent and willing to do that. So
before we get to before we get to number 5 here in the top 5
through 1.
Yeah, definitely want to thank today's sponsor, Fantasy Champs. They are the
premium.
Look, this is basically a tip as well. Like tip 1A. When you destroy and win your league, when that happens, you need to commemorate that. You need to get that trophy. You need to put something up on that wall. I like the rings. Okay, when you win, you put a ring on it, right? Didn't Beyonce have a song about that?
She certainly did. I mean, it not only displays your championship, but also can be a protective item in a pinch.
Yeah. So look, if you won a #FootClan title last year, head over to fantasychamps.com. Make sure you can use the promo code BALLER to save 10%. Their rings are great, and check out their ring display boxes. Oh. We've got one of those in here. We should get this in the set somehow. So it got the mirror back and the nice acrylic stand. Just check it out. You will be impressed. If you've already got a ring, display it. FantasyChamps.com.
Yeah, and use the promo code BALLERS.
Ballers.
Get that 10% off. Also, we want to remind you about the Ultimate Draft Kit. If you don't have it yet, hop in there. We got all our projections. We got the video profiles. We have consistency charts, so at a glance you can see which guys have been consistent not only over last year but over the course of their career. In case you want to balance your roster, right? You want to get your roster.
It's all about that construction of the roster.
Yeah, you want to balance it out, and they're just ever updated, always updated. Better than a magazine, ultimatedraftkit.com. Get that right now. Get prepped up for your draft. Let's go ahead and get back into the countdown.
Number 5.
All right, number 5. This is I told you to name this Drop It Like It's Hot.
You talked to
but it's Drop Watch.
to Father Time over there.
Drop Watch, which does, in fairness, make a lot more sense to what this tip is. So the Drop Watch.
I mean, yeah, you're welcome that I changed the name.
Right. There you go. This is really, really simple, but it's a tip that everybody that's played before, you're going to hear this and you're going to go, yes, I know, I need to do this better.
So be better.
Watch the players that are dropped. Okay, every day, if you're in a fab league or maybe even if it's a waiver wire order priority thing, so long as it runs daily, every day you come and you go, oh, who was taken? Who did players bid on? What prices did they go? But you know what you're not paying attention to too often is who did that other idiot drop to pick up this guy? And there's nothing more frustrating than when all of a sudden I come in and I see that Mike has picked up a player that I didn't notice was dropped. And I go, what? You got him for free off the waivers? How did I miss that? So whatever you have to do, just make it a habit in your routine, or set a little daily timer if you've got one of those daily waiver wire times of days that your system runs. But when you're looking at that, pay attention to who has been dropped every year. I mean, you go back and look at who won the championship at last year, and you're going to see they picked up some guys on the waiver wires that other fools dropped.
You know
like
what
when
it
I
is?
dropped Joik Bell and you.
I'll say Jason's talking to himself right now.
Yeah, this is a tip to me, Jason. Pay attention to this one.
There are two big times when I think that this is really important. One is when the waivers process, maybe it's Wednesday morning, and you see the giant list of names of people signed, and you just don't make the extra click to go look at the equal amount of players dropped. That is an important time. The other time that is so important, it's Sunday morning when people sign a player to play that day. Everybody gets caught up in all the big names of who performed that weekend, and those are your waiver wire pickups. And nobody notices that there were 3 or 4 guys dropped that are also should be considered in that list, but no one's talking about them because on Sunday, 5 names blew up, and those are the guys that become your waiver wire pickups, and you don't think about these guys.
And the reality is that when those Sunday drops happen, a lot of times those are better players being dropped because of necessity. They're going, shoot, I had a bye week, I had this other injury.
They try
I
and
don't want to
sneak him
drop
through.
this guy. Yeah, they try to sneak drop. Don't let them sneak
Don't
drop
let them
on
sneak.
you.
Drop watch.
Drop it like it's hot.
Number 4.
Oh, what is happening?
Great Scott!
Thank you so much, Christopher, because we're talking about backs to the future.
Number 4 is
Because
backs to the future.
running backs are crucial. They are crucial to your team and not
And to your future.
yes, into your future. Hashtag Foot Clan title. And we're not just talking about all running backs. You're talking about the top running backs. And when I leave a draft, of course, know your
Everyone's
scoring.
happy. They
We've
clap.
talked
You're
about,
out the door.
Yeah,
and
of course.
It's a good thing.
We've already talked about know your surroundings, know your league settings, and your scoring formats. But almost always, I will leave my draft with more running backs than I have wide receivers because I know the value of a top running back. And I know that those middle-tier wide receivers are a dime a dozen. They are on the waiver wire. They are free to just grab and play every single week. We made the joke about trying to stream a top running back, and it's impossible. You can stream your wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
They are readily available for you. Meanwhile, when you look at the final scoring of running backs, a cliff happens every single year right around the edge of the running back 2s. Wow. You see the wide receiver scoring, it just ticks down. It's a nice little staircase. Meanwhile, there's the cliff of death for the running backs, and that's why I load up on them, especially like I don't want to draft a kicker. I don't want to draft a defense. I want running backs who can possibly get an opportunity because when that opportunity comes, everyone's throwing their entire fab at these players, and I want them already on my roster. I want Robert Turbin on my roster in case something happens to Frank Gore. I want James Conner on my bench already in case something happens to Le'Veon Bell, because once the injury has happened to a star player, it's already too late. It's too late. You've lost unless you have all your fab.
Another example of that would be a guy like Mark Ingram, who's slipping to the 10th round in a lot of drafts, where you have the choice. You can draft maybe your wide receiver 3 there, or you can take a shot on a guy whose role doesn't seem to be like written in stone, but is a productive and has been a productive running back. You just might that's one of my problems is I don't like drafting a guy without a defined role. But you've shown year in and year out that having those guys in your bench has always paid dividends. Paid out dividends.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the alternative, you finish your draft, you go into week 1, and all of a sudden you need, like you said about the waiver wire, you need to pick someone up to start. Okay, pick up Robbie Anderson. He's going to be out there. He's probably the number 1 wide receiver. Play him, and you'll get points. Pick up Cameron Artis-Payne and get.
Don't do that.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
That's my point. Is when you're after your draft, you are never going to be in a situation where you're sad that you've got enough running backs because of the waiver wire. You don't need as many wide receivers as you think. When you're in those middle late rounds and you're loading up on wide receivers, you're doing it wrong.
When I make a trade, if I'm giving away a running back, I always get a running back in return. Maybe it's not the same level or same quality of running back, but I want someone who I can at least start, because they're all going to be rostered. Finding running backs is so very difficult throughout the year. And when I say that, of course, the waiver wire guys pop up, but everyone now is targeting that running back. Your competition is 11 other people instead of no one.
Right. And all this advice is still, again, for the vast majority, the 95% of leagues. But if you are in a full PPR, 3 wide receiver, only 2 running back, 2 flex, then sure. You need to know your league. It doesn't work for every league, but usually this is right.
All right, let's move on.
Number 3.
All right, I got this one, and I named it Master of Trades, okay? How can you be the master of trades?
Teach us, Andy.
Trading is one of my favorite things. I've always got the most transactions completed in our league because, look, part of it is persistence, right? And that doesn't mean you're wearing somebody down with terrible offers, but it means that you're being creative.
It means you're wearing everyone down.
It means you're being creative repeatedly. That's what persistence means.
I feel like, to interject here, I actually thought about this the other day, nothing related to this show or this tip, but I was thinking, you just put in so much more time looking at how to improve your team. You look at other rosters and think, how can I make my team better? You just do that a whole lot more than most people.
So that's part of that's persistence.
Andy takes the approach. He's like, you know how realtors cold mail, snail mail out their flyers like, hey, think about selling your house? You're like, no, because 99 out of 100 people are like, no, I'm not thinking about it. But there's that one person.
That one. Andy nabs them.
And when you find that one person is really valuable for you.
Yeah,
maybe it pays off.
Maybe I get a little bit of excitement out of the reactions of league mates when trades go down. But look, here's the deal. Remember the value. Here's one of the keys to being a master of trades. Remember the value of a 2-for-1 and a 3-for-2 trade, where you are giving up more pieces than you are getting in return. Because what this allows you to accomplish in a 2-for-1 trade is, 1, you're always getting the best player in the deal. 2, you have more of an ability to meet another team's needs. If you look at your opponent and you say, wow, they've got a hole here and they got a hole here, I'm going to give them a couple of pieces. I'm going to make the case to them that this fills a couple needs, and I'm going to get the best player in return. Then guess what you got? You got an open roster spot. In a 2-for-1, a 3-for-2, you've got a spot, even a 3-for-1. You've got 2 spots that you can use the waiver wire and all of your research and players that you can pick up and take flyers on. It's not really a 2-for-1 because you could just substitute that waiver wire pickup name in for your blank spot. So 2-for-1 and 3-for-1 trades, 3-for-2 trades, I love those. You always get that benefit of adding the extra player. Another tip, trade players when their production level is unsustainable. Sometimes you have multiple weeks earlier in the season where, look, if the player did that for that 3-game span for the whole season, they would break NFL records. Most of the time, that's an unsustainable pace, and it's hard to trade guys at that point.
Yes, it is.
It's very hard because you think, ooh, what if he what if he does?
What if he did?
What if he did break every record in the entire NFL and have 44 touchdowns? But it doesn't happen. So if you want to trade a player, trade him when a player trade for players or trade players that don't have sustainable levels of production. And like I said, be persistent. You can help shape the opinion of your league mates about your players. Drop a little stat. Drop a little information. Talk about a guy. Look, it's an influential type of thing. You have to be persuasive when you trade. And that doesn't mean deceiving somebody. That means being persuasive and meeting another team's needs. Don't offer crap that doesn't – there's no angle, right? You need an angle when you trade. So if you can figure out that angle, it's going to give you an advantage, and you can become the master of trades. All right? Let's move on.
Number 2.
You don't win your fantasy championship at the draft, and you certainly do not win it with your first 2-round picks. I've said this a million times before. This is like if I get a tattoo, I just get that on my back. You
on
don't
your
win
lower
your
back, yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Right over the butterfly that I have there.
Yeah, you got to cover up the butterfly.
Yeah, that's embarrassing at this point in my life. So here's the deal. You don't win the championship at your draft. You've heard me say this. This is personal to me because, back in when I used to run my old business, I'd get so excited for fantasy football. I would spend the time right now, just like you listening are doing. I'd listen to podcasts. I'd get my magazines, and I would put in the work, and I'd be so excited, and I'd have a great draft. But then I would taper off, and I would stop paying attention. I would stop listening. I would watch some games on Sunday, and I would finish, at or near the playoffs, and then I'd lose week 1 in the playoffs. What changed is the fact that what's that?
To me, you would lose to me.
Yeah, well, you are in my division, and oftentimes it was to you a long time ago. And the reality is, you need to change your approach and be consistent throughout the year. You can't just put in all the work at the draft. You don't win your championship there. You never do. Now you can lose it. You can mess up and not have a foundation that is good enough to get you there. But it's about the trades, like Andy was talking about. It's about the waiver wire pickups. It is so much about the start-sit decisions that you make week in, week out that get you the victories. You need to make sure that you're going long-term through the season and you don't bail out after draft season. But since it is draft season, I also wanted to remind people, don't care so much about your first 2-round picks. You go over and over and you think, okay, should I go running back, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver, wide receiver. Who cares?
Wow.
To a point. I'm just saying.
All right.
I'm just saying. If you want to build
Somebody's drafting 2 quarterbacks.
If you want to build a foundation that will not lose your championship at the draft, then you need to go deeper. You need to look deeper at who are good values that you like in the 8th round, in the 9th round, in the 10th round, in the 6th round. Those are where at the draft level. Let me read you some names here, okay? Let me read you some names, and you tell me what they all have in common from last year. Eddie Lacy, Jamal Charles, Dez, Gronk, Allen Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, Lamar Miller, Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson.
I'm going to go with these are top 2-round
First
picks.
2-round picks.
Those are all top 2-round picks who sucked last year. And you know what's going to happen this year?
There's going to be some.
There's going to be that many top 2-round picks that stunk, and plenty of people who drafted those guys won their championship because they did well throughout the rest of the draft, and they paid attention through the season, and they picked up the right waiver wire. We want to bring people #FootClan titles, so look deeper in your draft, be more prepared there, and then don't bail out after draft season.
Yeah, that's good advice, and I think the thing there is if you did draft a couple of those names, you might have been sitting on your pedestal thinking you're set to go.
Yes.
And not been as diligent in later rounds because you snagged the big 2 names in the first 2.
But you were smart enough to grab Michael Crabtree in the 8th last year.
Right.
And you were fine when Hopkins didn't pan out.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on to number one.
Number one.
See, it was number one. The guy said so. Look, this one we're all going to jump in on here. This is what this show is all about. I mean, Jason talked about it's not just the draft. We're a year-round fantasy football podcast for a reason. Not because you have to listen to us all year long, but you might want to, and we wanted to, and that's why we did this starting this years ago, because, look, it is more, and this might be hard to believe, it is more than wins or losses. It is about enjoying your league, enjoying your season. And, Mike, the other day I asked you, why do you play fantasy football?
Because it's fun.
Yeah. So there are a lot of ways that we think you can do this, that you can make it more about wins and losses so that each year is very rewarding. Look, it's just like the NFL. There's only one title winner at the end of the year. Now, we're going to do our best to help you make the right decision so you can get that hashtag FootClan title every year. But here's the deal. There are a lot of FootClan leagues out there. People listening to this show, all FootClan members, only one of you is going to win that league this year. So what are some ways that we can make our leagues better each and every year so that we're enjoying ourselves, so that we're being great commissioners? What are some of the things that we can do?
Well, one thing, and you just alluded to it at footclanleagues.com, is have great people playing with you, right? So that means playing with people who are more educated at fantasy football, who enjoy talking about it more. Share some resources, whether it's, maybe your friends don't know about Roto World, the app. Tell them. I know it seems
you're giving away your secrets.
But when you give away your secrets a little bit, I mean, I'm not talking about, you don't share everything. I remember back in the day, you'd always have that year one when you got a new source, you'd be like, "Oh, Mike, I got a new source.
Yeah.
I ain't telling you nothing." But
yeah,
then,
I don't even think when you play with good people in your league, it's more about getting people that are going to be committed too. It's not necessarily all sharing that resource or one resource or the other. It's just making sure you're not in a league with 3 committed people and 7 people that auto draft and don't participate the rest of the year. You also need to find a way. One of the ways to do that is just facilitating good communication in your league. We've done this through Facebook groups. We've done this through Slack channels. We've done this in environments where, look, you're not relying on somebody to log in and find a message board that is hard to find. SleeperBot, their leagues, that's one nice thing about them. There's just an open chat channel in there. You're not going to miss news.
Other things that make for a fun league, trust your gut. You know what I mean? Like if you've got a guy this draft season that you think he is going to break out, but you know what? The 3 of us or other analysts, we disagree with you. Trust your gut. Draft him. We're not going to be right about everything. No one is. And so when you when you get that guy that's like, I knew it.
Ooh,
I
it
told
feels
you.
good.
You know,
feels good.
You end up with a fat head on the wall of that player. You got the championship belt around your waist, the rings on your hand. It just feels good. It's fun. Trust yourself.
It's also more fun to win with players you enjoy rooting for a lot of the times, or as Mike would say, it's real bad to lose with players that you hate, a la Doug Martin last year.
I say it's more about that because it's dangerous. It's always dangerous when you are just like, oh, I really, really like this guy, so I want to make sure he's on my team. But when you dislike or just you don't believe in a particular player, and then you go all in on them anyways, that really
you get peer pressured into
exactly. You get
buying
peer
in on
pressured
somebody
into
you
which,
don't
I mean,
believe
that's
in.
just
It kinda goes
piggybacking
with
what Jason's saying.
You know how this show got started? This show started. The initial seed that built this podcast was basically Mike and I made a podcast for our individual league for 12 other owners.
It was a blast.
10 other owners. We made a podcast once a week. We talked for 15, 20 minutes. We talked crap about the other league members and ourselves. We made fun of the things, but it brought the league together. Look, you want to have fun. You want to stay connected. You want to buy in. You want to respond to people's trades. You want to just take a little bit of pride in your league, and it will improve the experience for every single person.
I also think, we haven't really said this before. I don't think we've told people do this, but I want to tell people do this. I encourage you, if it is at all possible, to do live drafts. When you can get your friends and family or workers or whatever at the same place, as opposed to online drafts. Now, sometimes you have to, and there's nothing wrong with online drafts. We're going to do an online draft for the listener league. It would be impossible to not do that. But you have so much more fun when you've got that event, when you're making it this time where you get together and you see your buddies, and one or two can't be there, whatever, Skype them in, get on a Google Hangout, or whatever. Don't let that say, well, two guys can't, so we can't get this group together. Those events, they're just fun. We're all becoming adults in our lives.
Says 35-year-old man.
Oh, I'm still 18 at heart. And so we don't have as many
Stalker.
great events to do every year. So it's just one of those days to look forward.
All right, I'm gonna count them back, and then we're gonna jump into our best ball segment. Give you some. Today we're going to give you some late-round best ball targets in our best ball segment, so pay attention to that. Number 10, don't get sentimental. Number 9, quarterbacks, you can take a number. You can draft them late. Number 8, a Jason special, be a draft stalker. Pay attention to the other teams in your league. Number 7, Mike talked all about tiers, all right? Level up your draft game by drafting with tiers. Number 6, I said know your surroundings and know your league. Find the things that you can maximize within your league settings. Number 5 was drop watch. Pay attention to those players dropped throughout the week, the guys that sneak onto the waiver wire, maybe nobody notices. Number 4 was backs to the future, all right? Your future fantasy football success is going to be dependent on your realization of the value of the running back position. Number 3 talked about trading. Be a master of trades. Understand that 2-for-1s, 3-for-2s, those are an advantage for you. You get the best player back. You got an extra spot to fill off the waiver wire. Number 2, Jason talked about not winning your entire league at the draft, and certainly not in those first 2 rounds. Look, guys are going to bust. You got to pay attention to the later ends. You got to pay attention on the waiver wire through trading and all that stuff. And the number 1, look, it's more than wins or losses. Find some ways to take pride in your league, make it a more enjoyable experience, upgrade that experience every single year. And there are a lot of ways to do that, and you'd be surprised. You can get the league to buy in on some of those. Let's say you want one of those sweet league trophies. Well, you got 12 guys that can throw $5 in and get a sweet league trophy and get it engraved every year. Have some pride in your league, and hopefully you enjoyed those top 10 tips and tricks for this season. Let's go ahead and talk a little best ball.
Best Ball Bonanza, brought to you by PlayDraft.
All right, every Friday we're talking best ball, DFS, got the Play Draft segment. You can go to playdraft.com/ballers, get a free entry into a best ball league if you are so inclined, which we are so inclined. Look, late round best ball targets. You're talking about players who, when drafted in best ball leagues, could pay dividends from week to week. Maybe not redraft targets because their consistency levels aren't there, but they're best ball targets because they might pop every 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, and these are guys you can get in the double-digit
round, deep best ball targets.
And they might give you 2 to 3 weeks of humongous production and jump into your starting roster.
Yep. So if we're going super deep, I'm going to go with Anquan Bolden as a name I'll throw out there because with Tyrod Taylor, he will catch he'll probably catch 5 or 6 touchdowns. And when you're super late in those drafts, I mean, those are the ways to get those late guys in your roster to have them score is they got in the paint.
Zay Jones looked pretty good yesterday, too.
I love Zay Jones.
And I'll throw out a name here. He is a really forgotten man of the Pittsburgh Steelers who flashed huge playability. Sammy Coates, he was activated off the PUP a couple days ago, and trust me, people are completely writing him off because of last year, but he had a huge laceration, huge problem with his hand. For a guy who already has a difficult time catching the ball, adding a giant laceration is not going to make it easier, but he should be all healed up, ready to go, and now he's still just as fast.
There's a chance he could be cut, though.
Yeah.
Him or Justin Hunter are going to fight for that last spot. But, yeah, no, it's a good name because people will certainly take the news that is coming out now. If he makes the roster, he's a great target because he can get deep. Tyler Lockett.
Round 18?
Tyler Lockett, Chris Hogan.
Chris Hogan is a great one. You guys realize he's still a starting wide receiver for Tom Brady, but because there's other – you don't have to pick the right game.
You got Shiny. You got Brandon Cooks now. You got
Chris Hogan
the new guy.
J.J. Nelson. We talk all about the Arizona situation. J.J. Nelson is going to run a 9 route 4 to 5 times a game, and if you throw the ball up to him, He can put up big numbers in best ball leagues, and he's going to be free.
He's the perfect example of, like, I do not like J.J. Nelson in redraft. I'm never going to take him because I don't think you'll ever be confident enough to say, okay, I'm going to start him. But in a best ball league, man, that is I mean, you don't ever have to start him. It's great.
I think he was going to say that's delicious.
Yeah.
Or delightful.
It's delicious.
Or delicious. Other targets a little bit earlier, maybe. Deshaun Jackson. He's a great best ball target.
Ted
Ginn
Ginn
Jr. Absolutely.
I love
Michael Keaton, too. Kenny Stills is another guy, especially with Jay Cutler and his willingness to chuck it.
His ability.
His ability to chuck it.
And Parker is going to move up ADP because other people out there are going to see what Jay Cutler is doing as well, which Kenny Stills could be move the other direction because of it.
All right, we're going to have a bunch of great shows next week. We're going to be talking about, preseason week 2. Saw a few games, got a bunch more this weekend. We'll talk about all the fallout that happens, good and bad.
My guys.
And our My Guys episode, it's coming up.
About my guys.
Yeah, we'll get some voice lessons before the episode, and we'll take care of that. Hey, keep it right here. Thanks for your listenership, support. We'll see you on Monday. Goodbye.
You stole his goodbye.
He did. Hey, goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.